women are typically the backbone of a home. Women are the backbone of the company that they work with. We've seen it at the workplace. And they're also the backbone of a community. But sadly, what I have observed is that women tend to not make themselves a priority when it comes to health. Whether it is conditioning, whether it is biology, whether it is something that they are pressured under, I don't know what it is. And to discuss this, I have with me Anika Parashar, who's the founder of a woman company, where we're going to be discussing today, what does a woman go through? Why does she not make her health a priority? And we'll try and unpack the mindset of a woman today on Wellbeing Voices. So Anika, welcome to Wellbeing Voices.
Thank you so much, Harbinder, for having me. It's always nice to have a chat with you.
Fantastic. Anika, why do women only take action on their health when something goes wrong? Why not before that?
You know, I've analyzed this for so long, for so many years. First when I was running hospitals, then when I built the women's company and we were making products for women in their menstrual hygiene phases. Like, why do women not look at preventative health, you know, more seriously? And why do we have to land in a particular stage of life, you know, when we sort of act upon things and we try and find solutions or remedies for it? I think we are so busy nurturing the world. And our world particularly, that we forget to nurture ourselves, you know. So we are so busy playing those roles of mother, and wife, daughter, sister, friend, employer, that you know, you tend to put yourself last in that whole hierarchy. And it's not just, I think it's women all over the world that do this, you know, but in the Indian diaspora even more so, because you've got all these other network of relationships, you know, who are so in the forefront in your life.
So is it that you know, women are more giving by nature, or is it that they have been conditioned in a way that they put themselves the last?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think definitely I feel that women are more nurturing, and it's not to say that every woman wants to be a mother or a nurturer. Many do not, and that's also fine. But the ability to nurture, to hold, whether it is a friend, a loved one of any kind, not just a child, a pet, I feel there is that natural, you know, nurturing tendency that flows out of a woman, which maybe doesn't flow naturally out of a man. I'm not to say that men are not nurturers, but I think it comes more naturally to a woman. And as for conditioning, that I feel is definitely there. And I have a son and I have a daughter. My son is older, my daughter is younger. So I have been very mindful about not putting these age and gender roles in the way that I raise my children. I don't know if I've been successful yet, you'll have to talk to them about that. But I definitely feel this whole thing of women must look after the home, they must have that ability to, guests have come, serve the guests. Why don't you say that to the boy? You know, when you're teaching a girl, you know, my daughter is now going off to university, she is going to be taught how to cook, to be able to survive. But my son was given the same skills when he left 2 years ago. So, you know, there is definitely a conditioning that's there. And we are taught it by our parents, the society around, the environment itself. And we've been typecast into this, you know, girls are like this and boys are like this roles, you know, and those lines are now starting to blur.
Don't you think, Anika, you know, when I look at within my own very close network, when we're talking of conditioning, it is actually happening by the mothers, you know. And your children are not yet married, but you know, I don't know if things change when a daughter gets married. And when there are situations that someone is going through in marriage, the woman is always told that, listen, वो काम भी तो कर रहा है, वो ये भी कर रहा है, थोड़ा सा ध्यान दो, कोई बात नहीं, एडजस्ट कर लो, थोड़ा सा करना चाहिए, कोई गेस्ट आता है, देख लो. You know, this is so deep rooted that somewhere I feel that, you know, you're actually creating a guilt in the mind of a woman that if she does not do something, that she's probably not playing the role really well. You know,
100%.
so yeah, and let's not just talk about the urban areas, the metropolitan cities,
No,
because
everywhere.
that's not the country that we are living in. We are living in Bharat, right? Yeah. We are one of the few elite who are privileged to live in a environment which is more conducive to not creating a gender bias, or at least trying to get out of it.
Yeah.
But do you think we as a society are nurturing guilt in the minds of a woman, saying that ki ghar ka to kaam tumhe hi karna hai? And sometimes it's by nature. You and me were talking about it the other day.
A few days ago, yeah.
And we were saying that, why is it that a woman who's working as hard, they're working in the corporate world, so they're working in the same environment that the man is working, they're working with the same pressures, they're dealing with the same pressures at work, but when she comes home, she on her own is more inclined to go to the kitchen and see that khane ka kya intezam karna hai, what's for dinner, or at least she's the one who thinks about it and goes and asks it, listen, what about dinner tonight, right? This does not come naturally to a man. So what do you think, as a woman and as a mother of a daughter, and a son, that we could do to create a guilt-free environment for a woman so that she feels good about whatever she's doing without getting into a guilt trip?
I think that's a really, really interesting question, and I would like to think about it actually from my kids' point of view. That have they been brought up differently, maybe to the way I was brought up? My father used to say this line called, it used to be, pink is for girls, okay? So it was almost like typecast, to the point where I can't wear pink easily today also, He was very sweet about it, and there was also the whole thing of, that a woman was special, she was, she had to be cared for. My brother was taught that whatever happens, you must protect your sister, you must love your sister. So the woman was this fragile, pink wearing creature who was, had to be cared for. And then I think somewhere along the way, society and environment changed, right? And the demands for a woman, or a woman's own desires to, be something more than her house-oriented roles, grew. And as that grew, she was suddenly, wearing the pants at work and then having to come back and wear the skirt or the sari at home, So, I mean, I speak for myself. I think somewhere along the way, I was the eldest child and I had certain responsibilities that fell to me. I was, a single mother, so I was playing a dual role in my home. And I was, in various lead roles through my career. So I had to, so to say, wear the pants there. But then I came home and I had to be this mummy who gave puch and who gave love and who gave support. And balancing that within myself also became such a challenge, Harbinder, as time went on, and I think my feminine side, which is my ability to receive, my ability to nurture, took a hit, okay? Because there were so many messages that you receive through your life, and then your life also charts certain paths that make you play one or the other role a little bit more than than the rest. I think that there's a difference in the way that my children have been brought up. Not to say that my parents' upbringing was incorrect. It's just that times have changed, and you embrace those changes. So I don't think at this point my daughter feels any guilt more than my son for not being present. In fact, I feel in some ways my son is, has been raised with so much EQ, being in a women's home, that I would like to believe that he would naturally, embrace some of those roles in his future as a husband or as a father, My daughter, in fact, is fiercer than my son. Okay, so I don't think there's any guilt over there, but I definitely feel the guilt. So her boards are happening right now, and I'm not able to be at home all the time, and that's hard for me. So the guilt is still there, despite having that strong masculine. The feminine is still there. The conditioning is still there. So I don't know how much hope there is for our generation, but I'm hoping that it changes as it goes on.
But my son is having his exams right now, and I'm okay to go out, work, and my wife would be the one who would say that, listen, I need to spend time with him, and because chutti leni hai, I will probably skip my day at work today and spend time with him so that I can help him in his studies. But that just comes so naturally to women,
her,
and sometimes I feel guilty that मेरे को क्यों नहीं ध्यान आता है ऐसा.
Am I not doing enough?
But let me take a cue from what you just said. You insisted on this word that I'm a single mother, right? It just puts a question in my mind that are you forced to do something which you felt should have been the role of a father, right? And which leads me to my question saying that, is there certain things that a male can do or should be doing which is not expected of a woman, right? This leads me to going back and saying that in the olden days, in the tradition where there was a housewife and a male would be the bread earner and both would be playing their important roles, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction, where did the satisfaction levels change where a woman felt the need to be liberated and come out and play the role of or try and do things that why should I be left behind? I could do the same thing as what my male counterpart is doing. कहाँ पे कुछ change हुआ, or do you feel, because you've seen both sides, now you're playing a role of a father and a mother, right? What do you think is a woman's point of view on this particular thing?
I definitely think that a change happened. Now, when did that change happen? I don't know. Now, you're talking to someone whose nani was one of India's first professor of pediatrics, okay, women. And my dadi was a nurse in the army, okay. But after that, I'm blessed with, 3 masis I had, and I have 2 chachis. They were all very highly educated, but they chose to stay home to raise their families, all of them. And then, in my generation, I was one of the first that started working again. Okay. Now, the mixed messaging was, I was the first girl born in 7 generations in my family, Harbinder, okay? So my dada would be like, you are the Lakshmi, all of our luck changed, everything changed since, you came. That was amazing. Like, I never thought of myself as so cool, right? but clearly I was somewhere there. Having said that, there was also pressure to be something, to kind of, to be able to step into that title, of what that was. It's also how things started changing around me. So maybe I grew up with this strong set of women who raised their families, which I believe, by the way, in hindsight, I think that that's the most fabulous role that a woman can do. And the toughest, because you actually put your own ambition, your own desires aside to put your family first for 18, 20 years, which is not easy, okay? If you have those dreams.
Right.
If your dream is to be a mom first and foremost and to be a wife, fantastic, then those ladies hit jackpot. But some of them had to really put those desires to bed for a while, at least, or maybe forever. I was very clear that there were both, because maybe I had a strong father and a very present mother at home. So I definitely wanted to cook every night for my children, which is what I do, and definitely wanted to do the puch and all of that. But I also wanted to go out and fulfill this fire in my own belly, which has come from, maybe it was watching things, maybe it was seeing the environment changing, maybe it was the media and how that was growing the role of a woman, and how women themselves were changing their roles as time went on and as I grew, right? So I think that, from a woman's point of view, and if you're saying me as a single parent and why do I insist upon that, it's not so much of an insistence as it is just an existence, okay? That's just who I am. After 13 years of being the sole parent at home and not always having access to their father, and them not always having access to their father, it's about the decision making. Now, it's a lot of pressure. So you're running a business on your own, calls come down to you, the buck stops with you. But imagine, these are actual lives that you are raising. You are influencing on a daily basis. They're good, they're bad, they're ugly is all on me. And that's terrifying, It's a powerful position to be in, but it's terrifying. And there are many times, Harbinder, when I feel that old, little bit of traditional father's words or upbringing coming up, where I'm like, I don't want to get the cars serviced. I don't want to get the insurance paid. I don't want to pay the taxes. I don't want to book the travel, the holidays. That's a man's job. I'm doing now my job, which is the cooking and the cleaning and the raising of the kids. But I'm also then recognizing, Anika, but you're doing it and you're fine doing it. You know, it would be nice to have that. It would be nice to have someone to take care of you in what it defines as the man's way, and I would take care of that person in what is defined as the woman's way, you know, by keeping home, etc. But I don't know if, you know, I don't know if, I mean, I can do it, and I'm doing it. And I'm sure if you had to do it, then you would do it. If your wife went on vacation for 2 weeks and, you know, your son was having exams, you would probably be a little bit more mindful about being at home every now and then. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
The backup that you have in each other is the beauty. You know?
You very beautifully brought it out, because you know what we were talking of, that there are certain things that naturally come to a woman. Things like taking care of the car, etc., are very naturally coming to a man.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where I think the thing is. But when we were talking about women, they are the ones who think about managing the home, balancing outside world with the environment at home. They're more mindful about what everything else in the environment is creating an impact on a child who they are raising as a parent. Do you think most of the women's health issues are deep rooted in these conditioning of taking stress, trying to suppress their own dreams, etc.? Is this creating an impact on their not prioritizing health?
You're talking to someone who's a believer of mind-body connect. Okay, so I do believe that certain traumatic experiences in your life, or certain perceptions, or certain experiences, emotions can create particular ailments in your body. Okay, there's a great, I mean, there are many fantastic writers that have written about this, or you know, gurus that have spoken about this. Back many years ago, when I first came across this concept, was Louise Hay, who was, you know, I mean, she cured her own cancer, and she delved into pieces of her past to actually heal those parts of herself that she believes brought on that cancer. So I do believe that there is, you know, a strong mind-body connect. When my mom was, you know, diagnosed with, you know, her heart failure, and her transplant was imminent. She went to a doctor, you know, in the US, who had actually been my Masi's transplant doctor, and she'd had her surgery in the US 25 years ago.
Right.
And that, you know, my mom said to this doctor, I don't want to have a transplant. I don't want to have a transplant. What can I do? And this cardiologist in, you know, one of these top US hospitals said to her, well, you know, what you can do, Mrs. Parashar, is yoga, you know, healing, go salt free, meditate every day, you know. And she said, does that really work? Because my parents weren't believers in all of this stuff as I am. And he said, absolutely it works, you know, absolutely it works. And I have seen great things happen. And to have a renowned medic, you know, at a Mayo clinic say this to her was just almost like validation of the same. Correct. You know. So I do believe that that you know, what we are, or what happens to us is a you know, is a symptom of what we've experienced for many years. There's something called middle-age rage. Okay?
Middle-age rage.
Middle-age rage.
Oh,
okay,
awesome.
Which is what they you know, they're kind of saying that menopause is, because women are kind of awakening. You know, they're awakening from their conditioning of all these years. Like, you know, just a thought that you were that, you know, that came up when you were speaking was that, why would I think to call you for advice when I'm buying a new car, but my girlfriend for advice when I'm trying to figure out what to plan for my dinner menu for the guests I'm having over on Saturday night? Yep. Okay, it's again because I'm me myself as a strong independent woman who's played dual roles at work and at home, still typecasts.
Right.
Okay, I'm still doing it, and yet that's changing quite a bit. I have a mentor who was, you know, with me. I mean, at Fortis when I used to work there, his name is Mr. Daljit Singh, fantastic guy. And I have spoken to DS, as I lovingly call him, about where to get my razais stuffed, to kaunsa achar ka recipe kya hai, you know, and so it's changing, but
Right.
it's still not fully there, you know.
And this is interesting because, you know, when we are talking about stereotyping and, you know, बहुत बारी I've observed that people come and say कि यार stress हो जाता है, कोई बात नहीं, ठीक है. And sometimes I feel that, you know, we're just normalizing these conditions like stress for a woman.
Yeah.
You know?
For everybody.
You know, when there's a man who feels stressed, so we usually relate a stress to stress of work. And then we tell them that, listen, thoda sa walk kiya karo, ye sab kiya karo. And for a woman, instead of coming up with solutions, we actually tell them that don't worry yaar, ho jata hai ye stress. You know? Why do we end up normalizing stress and such kind of pressures for a woman that it's okay, you've got to deal with it, you know? And usually I've seen that coming from people who are close to you, you know, and these are women who are guiding the other woman.
Yeah.
तो ये ऐसा होता क्यों है और इसके लिए क्या करना चाहिए so that, you know, we can break the, when we are talking of breaking the biases, I think these are the kind of biases that need to be addressed.
But Harbinder, the conversations are changing. Okay, so when I talk to my, they'll kill me for this, middle-aged girlfriends, okay, which is what we all are, the conversations are changing. The space is being held differently, you know. When we say that we're going through something, there is no judgment, there is no advice that is offered, there's no, you know, because we've recognized that there is very little that we can do for each other but hold space, you know. I can't, I mean, if you come to me with something that's deeply weighing on you, I can be, as a good friend, listen to you, okay? I can't go into your life, I can't change it. If your boss is pissing you off, I can't, you know, sort him out. If your family member, there's some issue, I can't make that better for you. But what I can do is I can give you that real safe space to engage and to and hold space for you, you know? And women, in terms of what they are providing for each other, is those resources of safe space and safety and intimacy, okay? And through that, I think there is a resource pool being created, okay? Which is that, are you stressed out? Listen, babe, let's go for a walk. Or have you tried music? Have you tried, you know, have you picked up a couple of hobbies? Playing the piano is really working for me. Have you tried, you know, my meditation practice is going really well. Why don't you give that a shot? You know, it's not about talk to your husband about this, you know, go to your mom and say this. It's not like that. We're just holding space and providing tools. And that's, at least in the urban communities, I feel that is changing, you know, slowly.
I want to move on to something which is on the physical aspect of a woman. You know, we know that they go through hormonal changes, they have different phases of their life that they're dealing with different physical conditions. How much of their moods, how much of their responses to situations, reaction to something within a relationship is impacted by things like menstrual cycles, etc. Because I remember you and me, when we were talking about the age of 9 to 90 and whatever happens in between. Would you like to share as to, you know, what are the different phases that a woman goes through and how do the physical attributes or the physical changes impact a woman and what she is to the outside world? And the reason I'm asking you this is because one of the cliched statement that everybody makes, when I say almost everyone makes, is that, you know, women are very difficult to understand, right? And it's because they behave differently in different times, right? When you are expecting a woman to behave in a particular manner that you have experienced in the past, and suddenly 5 years later, she's responding differently, right? So can you explain your perspective as a woman? And, you know, the strength that you have right now is a middle-aged woman.
Yeah.
So you've gone through half your life, and I'm sure you've gone through various changes. And, you know, you have a daughter, and you have a business that you set up based on your conversations and challenges that you saw around women and teenage girls. So you'll be the best person to explain the changes that a woman goes through and what is the role of the physical attributes that impact those changes?
I mean, I think one of the things that you said was that, you know, we keep changing. At least we keep things exciting. Are you trying to say that men are predictable and boring? Hormones play such an important role in men and women. Okay, but since we're talking about women today, and it's not imagined. It's not like you know, back in the day when I was growing up, also, oh, are you PMSing? You know, oh yeah, you must be PMSing. It was almost a derogatory comment. It was almost like a put down, like she must have her period because she was emotional, or she was. But the reality is, the hormonal fluctuations that happen genuinely make women like that. Okay, there are surges in your estrogen, your progesterone, and they cause a crazy kind of yo-yo like effect in a woman's emotions and through different stages of her life, which is, you know, when you're getting your period, there's the hormonal ups and downs, and it's happening to girls who are younger and younger every day because of our lifestyles, because of the cortisol levels, because of the chemicals in our food, because of the processed food that we eat, you know, and you know, young girls of 9 and 10 to process the fact that you've got a period that comes every month, how to hygienically sort of care for yourself and, you know, the environment around as well, and manage that period, manage the emotions around it. My God, they're still babies, you know. So like, how do you reconcile that fact? That's one big chunk of time. Then when a woman is, you know, at that stage where she is, you know, trying to have a baby, if she wants to go down that path, and the hormones that go up and down with that, you know, and when she gets pregnant, and then when the pregnancy you know, sees its completion and the baby comes along, and the hormonal ups and downs then as well, you know, it's all real.
Yep.
You know, we've made fun of it over years. You know, we've talked about menopause in a way that, oh my God, yeah, women are just go crazy in there. But that middle-age rage is real also, because there is something, first of all, the hormones that are causing havoc within us, but also there is this very real realization that we are halfway done, that our bodies have changed, that our 35 years of periods are coming to an end, which means our ability to reproduce, our youth, you know, is slowly petering off. The hormones are going crazy. Because of the drop in estrogen, okay, our heart health is impacted, our bone health is impacted. And menopause happens over a period of 10 years. So, one second, you're saying puberty happens between 9 and 20 or 9 and 19 over 10 years. Menopause happens anytime between 35 nowadays, 40 to say 50, 55. So that's over 10 years. So 20 years of our lives, we're just having crazy hormonal fluctuations. And then the period of a year or 2 or 3 in the middle when we're producing babies. So if you think about it, it's a crazy emotional ride, you know. And the physical changes when you are starting your period, is you're developing, you know, a woman's anatomy is changing. She's got parts of her that she never had before, you know, she doesn't know how to relate to those. Her interaction with the environment around, be it even her brother, okay, who has been her pal all this time, you know, suddenly there are times when she's awkward and she doesn't want to. I remember that, you know, I remember with my brother, I mean, we were the best of friends. We grew up, you know, with so much love. We were inseparable, okay, literally on top of each other all the time, kabhi ladai, kabhi jhagda, kabhi whatever. And that changed for me a little bit. And he also, I remember him raising it, saying that, you know, like, what's up with you? There were days where I was more subdued. And maybe it was because I've been blessed, touch wood, with very good periods when I, you know, had them for so many years. I never knew when they were coming or when they were going. They were like clockwork. There was never any pain. My mom was the same. My daughter struggles a little bit more. So, you know, but you feel that sense of awkwardness. You feel that sense of change within you. You feel that mujh mein kuch badla hai, you know, there's some farak that's happening inside. And when you are having a baby, again, you're growing an actual human inside you. What is more powerful than that? So when we, as women, we're chasing this masculinity, and you know, we're trying to, you know, sit in the same seats in the boardroom, they can't compete with us, because we can grow entire human beings inside our bodies. You know, it's a crazy thing that women want to compete with men. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It is the law. It is just the way that it is. And then when you're going through menopause, again, all the changes that are happening. You're sitting in meetings and you're holding, holding fort, holding court, and you suddenly have a hot flash and you are sweating, you're uncomfortable, you're palpitating, you don't know what it is. There are people staring at you. That presentation has halted. It is scary. It's scary,
Right.
But now, women have again started adjusting to those as well. I know that, my daughter's age group definitely tells me, I can't do this, I've got my period, or, I can't go swimming, or whatever. But you have that conversation even with your guy friends very openly, which we did not, and now very openly, whether it's in meetings or not. I've been in meetings, like I was telling you earlier, that the AC has been on full blast. The men in the room are freezing in their suits, and you are sitting there in your sari or your sleeveless, shirt, and you're fine, because it is crazy hormonal havoc in there.
You use the word estrogen, and I think when women are going through these different phases of PMS and menopause, it's the estrogen levels that are changing in your body.
And progesterone.
So, what do you think are the goods of going through these phases where you're blessed versus the challenges because of these conditions? And I'm consciously using this word blessed versus outside the challenges is because I know that these conditions actually help a woman deal with a lot of physical health issues compared to a man who does not go through these situations.
I can't comment from a doctor's point of view because I'm not one, and I don't know about every woman. I've got, some of my closest friends really have struggled with terribly difficult periods their whole life, and I have never understood it until I started perimenopause. I never understood it until things changed. So even as women, the level of empathy for or the point of view on whether we are blessed or not, to be in the zone is very subjective and very person to person based. I feel that it is a lot to cope with, and different women go through very different things. I mean, there are all kinds of symptoms from puberty to menopause during those particular periods where the hormones are particularly active. You can have headaches, you can have nausea, you don't sleep, there's hot cold that's happening, and then as we move on to being completely menopaused, estrogen, which protects the heart or the bones or whatever, it goes down, which is why so many women are moving towards hormone replacement therapy, which has its own controversies and it's got its own set of views by clinicians, which it's best we don't go into, but they're doing it because despite the side effects, there is a need to up those hormonal dips, and again, on a person to person basis, when clinicians are advising it, it's best to evaluate the whole scenario, because you are losing what has been core to your existence for so long.
Right. Anika, you have a daughter, right? And what I have observed is that children of today just seem to be dealing with more stress, more women than the boys, Is there something that has happened which has changed the way a woman deals with stress? Because stress तो पहले भी था, अभी भी है, शायद पहले ज़्यादा था, right? But today, children come up and say that, listen, I'm stressed right now. And when you ask them that, what is troubling you? Is there something that we can help you with? And they come and say that, I don't know what it is, but I'm just feeling very stressed. The anxiety levels have kind of gone up. As a woman yourself and as a mother of a teenage girl, what do you think has changed between the time when you were a teenager versus the teenage that you are mothering today? Is there something that you feel has changed?
I think there's definitely exposure to a lot more. Okay, there's exposure to all kinds of when I was a teenager, there was not so much exposure to these perfect bodies on Instagram and Facebook that you were competing with or felt the need to compete with. Not everyone had the perfect makeup. We didn't even know what makeup was at this age. You know, at 17, she does better makeup than I do at 47, you know. So it's, there is a lot of competition externally, okay? When you're not only competing on the feminine things like your looks, your body, your size, your shape, but you're competing on the masculine, or what was thought as masculine elements back in the day, which is your, you know, ability to perform in terms of your academics, your career, what colleges you get into, the ruthlessness of the job market, you know, and perform. So you have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to, you know, be a certain way, and that I know, being I'm a girl mom, yes, but I'm also a boy mom, and I'm a boy mom first, and I know he has equal stresses. You know, and the world is not, you know, not so kind to guys anymore either. You know, there has very clearly been, you know, a movement where women are speaking up, you know, on many things, whereas they are wanting equality, they are wanting, you know, their voices to be heard, whether it's the Me Too's and the rest of it, etc. And that is 100% legitimate and a win for all women. But there is also the aspect that not all guys are bad, you know, and not all guys also take on those emotional stresses, etc. So this typecasting can work in both ways, you know. I feel that my daughters, or our daughters' generation, have a lot more expectations that they create within themselves because of what they see in the world around them. Whereas when I was growing up, if I made something of my career or not was not the priority. The fact that I made it was a bonus.
Right.
Okay. So there was no pressure except my own internal pressure. Now it is, oh, she's going to this college and wearing these clothes and this beautiful and an Ivy Leaguer, and you know she's got a great job waiting for her. So you've got, you know, the game has intensified. You know.
Also, you know, I feel that when I look at my son. And when I look at his friends, I feel that the ability to deal with stress is, or deal with anxiety is much lower than what we felt. That's my personal thought. Because we were used to going out fending for stuff. You know, today, whatever we want is available to us. I remember my son, in about 2 years ago, he had his function in school the next day during Christmas, and he was supposed to take a few, you know, props with him. And he didn't tell me until it was 9 o'clock at night. And I would tell him that, listen, shops are closed. Where do I go get these? And you got a school, you have to leave at 7:30. And he was like, why don't we just order it online? It's going to come in 10 minutes. I was like, I didn't even realize that I could get this. I mean, I was thinking you can only order snacks,
or certain
things. But I didn't realize that. But you know, if you do not get what you are looking for, that creates an anxiety.
Yes,
right?
Because it's the generation of instant gratification.
Absolutely. Do you think, because you know, stress is an outcome of anxiety. There's nothing stress otherwise, in my opinion. Do you think boys and girls, it's not just about, you rightly said, it's the boys also who are dealing with stress. How do we teach our children today to deal with stress and say that, listen, it's okay? Because, you know, suddenly they are more aware. You said they have access to the internet, and suddenly they have access to what is the perfect body, what is the perfect job, etc. The expectation from the self is that, listen, I also want to build a career. I also want to have this, right? And they know that it is possible.
Yes.
Right? But they're not able to prioritize that, listen, I want this as my first priority, but I'm okay to have this as a second one. Right? कहीं ना कहीं मैंने देखा है बच्चों के अंदर अभी ये है कि I want it all. You know, वो एक मूवी में था ना, all I want is everything.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How do we deal with this situation and let them be a little more realistic and be calm about whatever is happening in their life and accept and move on more mindfully, more calmly, and just be little, I would say, not harsh on themselves. I find children today are very harsh on themselves.
100%, they are. Their expectations from themselves are so huge
Yes.
that nobody else has to put that pressure. I mean, although that pressure exists, subliminally, through all kinds of messaging across. But I don't know if there's anything we can do, Harbinder. And in the end, that's the way the world is going. Look at their stimulants. They are gaming while they're also scrolling on their phone. They're scrolling on their phone until they go to sleep. Like literally, their eyes do not even blink. Okay, right. You've got coffees, teas, boba teas. You've got iced coffees. You've got these shops at every corner. You have got the device use has become such an integral part of life. They don't know how to sit and just be. What they say about meditation is you sit in those moments of silence to connect with your inner self, to still yourself, to still your mind. Okay. Now that happens at our age. But what about, to tell the children to sit still without any kind of device for 5 minutes is impossible now.
But isn't that true for us also?
100%.
I mean, when we were kids, we would sit still or be without a device, or there'd be times when you would do nothing.
Yes.
Right?
Nothing.
But today, even us, when we have nothing to do, we pick up our phone and start scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
Right?
Exactly. And so how can you blame this generation? Now look, back in the day, my grandparents used to hold hands and walk through the park in front of here. They used to walk and they used to smell the roses. Okay. My parents' generation, every Friday my dad used to bring my mother roses. Okay. So wo kaat ke she would bring. So the strolling had stopped. It was coming in a vase and it was being put into the thing, but that act was being done. By the time I was married, okay, once in a while on specific targeted holidays like Valentine's Day or your anniversary or a particular thing is when the roses came.
Absolutely.
And if I ask my children when they last saw a rose, they probably wouldn't be able to even articulate that. So look at the generational changes. Smelling the roses and the sheer joy of the sensory joys have gone. Okay. So you're asking a crazy question, which is that how do we tell them to calm down? I think age, and I think that sense of, I don't even know actually, age in 30 years what it will be. I have no idea. Because see, we've come to this place now that we're comfortable within ourselves. We're at peace with who we are.
Right.
I know I'm not a particular size. I know I don't look a certain way. I know I've achieved only this much in my life or maybe much more than I expected. Whatever it is, I am
okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
Right.
Okay, I'm okay with myself.
Right.
But definitely a 17-year-old, 20-year-old is not at that space. Neither of wisdom nor of realization.
Listening to you, what I feel is that it's like, the transition that you spoke about, explaining through roses. It's like we are a frog in a pot where the water has been heating over a period of time and we think everything has changed, but it has not just changed overnight. It has been transitioning, evolving over a period of time, and today is when we are able to see a visible change.
Exactly.
But one thing that has not changed, in my opinion, I mean, I don't want to generalize it, is that I have seen women taking emotional responsibility for everyone around them. It is not just for themselves. उनको हर एक के बारे में उनको टेंशन लेनी है, हर एक के बारे में आप ऐसे क्यों नहीं करते, घर में कोई बीमार हो जाए तो they're like, why aren't you doing this? Is it something which is natural to a woman, or she's been conditioned to be taking the responsibility of everyone, even in the offices?
Yeah. I
mean, if you see something going wrong with someone, it's usually a woman employee who will be like mothering the situation.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
100%. It's both. We are natural nurturers for sure. Okay, and it comes naturally to us. Like if somebody at work even tells me that they're going through a hard time, that protectiveness, that nurturing comes out. If if there's someone who's not well or a friend I will want to send some food. I will want to send balloons. I will want to do my version of I love you, I'm thinking of you, all of that. If it's something towards, something about my kids, then I'm like a lioness, going for to protect my cubs. So it's a natural thing, and I see so many women around do it. Okay, much more than men who will maintain their boundaries. Okay, like if you're mentioning you're not well, I'll say to you, can I get you some ginger lemon? Can I get you some, is it warm enough here? Is it cold enough in the room for you? Are you comfortable? If I was the same, you'd probably say, Anika, are you feeling okay? Are you okay to go ahead with this interview? And if I said yes, you'd go on with your interview. It's just that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I see it with my 2 children. Okay, I see my son who is, I felt as we were growing up, had a much higher EQ than my daughter. Maybe still does, I don't know. But suddenly I find as they've grown up, she's the one who's attentive to the little details. Mama, are you okay? Have you had a bad day? Are you not feeling well? Are you not whatever? She will then instruct him and say, Mom, this is what's happened with Ma. He won't even pick up on it till a while later. So it is, and it's not to put down anyone. Maybe that's how they were created, as 2 sides of the of a coin, or as that they complete a picture or whatever, that it takes all kinds to build a world.
But this is very interesting, and I also believe that in my thought process, I've seen or I've observed that women are more cyclical, whereas men are typically very, very linear in their approach. But the society has kind of created everything around the male patterns. How we work, what we do, what is expected, what is not expected. Why does this happen? And
it's changing. It's slowly changing. I think it's happened for all these years because it was just the way of the world, and now it's changing. And
why did it become the way of the world?
That is a question that Adam and Eve can answer. I have no idea.
Is it because generally, when I look back and see the generations of our grandparents, of our parents, the decision making usually lied with the male.
But why?
Home. That's what I'm asking. I don't know where it started. Even now, with the most liberated modern woman, she likes to get the opinion of a male counterpart, whether it is at work or whether it is at home with their spouse or a father, before they take certain important decisions. Again, if we are going back to how men and women think, when we were talking about a woman, typically is you would go to a woman to ask about what cuisine to serve for a certain set of guests, versus where to get your car serviced or what car to buy or where to invest in property. Right? So we still find women going and asking their male counterparts to help them decide what to do. Right? Is this something that has kind of structured our society? As a woman, do you think this is correct? Are women more, in absence of a right word, not as confident to take that risky decision where money is involved, right? Whereas women like yourself, you are running you are a corporate business leader, you have done a startup and you're building a successful business. Why do we rely on such decisions which then result in structuring the society around male patterns? I mean, look at investment banking.
I think we started off as men being hunter-gatherers, okay, literally, in the literal way, and women being the ones that then took the hunt and the, whatever he gathered and making it into a nourishing something, and that's where it started. The stereotyping and the typecasting has not changed. Like I said to you, I make every decision myself, okay, whether it is my children, whether it is my NGO, whether it is my business, whether it is, myself and my life. And, yet there have been certain roles now, that I would go to a male friend for, and certain things that go to a female friend for. But again, that is changing, okay? I'm slowly seeing the difference in me, where my girlfriends, I'm realizing the kind of strength and power that I get from them, I don't get from my male counterparts, whoever they may be. And so, not to say that the man is becoming redundant, not at all. My father was the love of my life. My grandfather was an incredible man who had, played a pivotal role in my life. I had a wonderful relationship with my brother growing up. My son is, he's literally the apple of my eye. But there are different things that go to Nirvan for, and there are different things that go to Inayat for. Now what's changing is they are not gender based. They are personality based. So if I want a certain type of advice or validation, or sometimes that's all you need. You just need someone to hear, listen, I want to buy this car versus that car, what do you think? Just now it's one of my best friends and my Masi who advise me on cars. Okay. And I think that their research is top notch. I would go to, like I said, I go to DS for a recipe or something like that, which is, again, it's not typecasting or stereotyping into roles. And my Masi is advising me on cars, and my male mentor is advising me on recipes. So it's slowly changing, but I am also guilty of doing the same typecasting. I can see it changing on a personality base or an interest base. Now, Harbinder, if I know that you make the most amazing jams, okay, versus my girlfriend Natasha who loves changing tires, I mean, I know who to go to for what, right?
Right.
So that is also a personality based thing. If I come to you for cars, it's useless.
I'm extending this question. You find women today, when you are looking at the professional environment, trying to do things which were otherwise typecasted for men, or at least you said personality based. So they're trying to professionally be like men, and they're trying hard. You can see it, right? And I remember I was speaking to a parenting coach once, and he said something very beautiful, and that kind of stayed with me. And they said that, as a parent, we want our children to succeed. Now, the definition of success differs from person to person. But when you want them to succeed, and as a parent, you're wanting to help them. When you're trying to help them, you're trying to fill in the gaps where you find the child is not able to do his best, right? So, and every person, whether a child or an adult, they have their own strengths and they have their own weaknesses, and we try to fill in the gaps where the weaknesses are there, rather than strengthening their strengths that they are naturally blessed with, right? Then in the case of a men and women, and we have clearly identified that, they're both different personalities, they have something which is naturally they are blessed with. Why don't women strengthen and build personal and professional life based on strengths that they have been blessed with, rather than trying to do something that they are naturally not built to do? Right?
Because again, what is the, sorry.
And it's a very sensitive question. I don't know, I'll get a beating from the audience on this particular question, but it's something that comes to me, that why don't we build our personality types and everything around us focused on our strengths?
No, but we do. The question is that is what has changed. It was typecasted earlier that men were better at science, okay, for example, or math, okay. Men got the scientist roles, the astronaut roles, the banker roles, the financial, heads roles, the political head roles. Men got all of those, and women got different roles, softer jobs, softer things, And now what we're discovering is that's not true. It's like I said with my son and my daughter, it's personality based, So there are women who are much stronger at science and math. Why should we not build up that strength? And that's what they're learning to do now. That's why the world is changing, because we're picking up each person's strengths. Now, some men are better at, I think one of the stats that I read was that there are more male chefs in the world.
Absolutely, I was just coming to that.
Okay, so that whole thing of assuming that a woman's good in the kitchen is just an assumption. My son at 17 was cooking dinner a couple of times, a month over here, despite having help. My daughter at 17 cannot even cut a slice of bread, You know, they've not been raised as girls and boys. They've been raised as humans.
Fantastic.
And each of their skill sets are what are slowly coming out and shining, you know. And that's what I'm trying to build on. And that is what I think all women now are trying to build on, is that they're playing on their strengths. They're finding themselves and they're finding their strengths and then playing on that. Now, because the friction arises because, Harbinder, we've been taught for so many years that men do this and women do this, okay? And so that is why it's taking a little bit more time to settle, you know? And there is this extreme feminism and women's living and all, which it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be extreme men. It doesn't have to be extreme women. It can be just that we are accepted for who we are. And I have full faith we will move there. My kids are very focused. Now, one is studying medicine, one is studying law, okay? I was the average student, okay? Really just about scraped through with my grades. But I had this crazy fire and determination, okay? So I am not a great believer in grades. I understand you need to get good grades to get into good colleges, etc. But I don't think that defines you or your ability to succeed in life, you know? So my kids' biggest frustration with me is every parent asks about grades, you're not interested. I'm like, I'm not interested. I just don't give it that same amount of weightage. My questions to them are very different. My son, every time he calls me, are you happy? That's what I'm interested in. Okay, if I hear a little bit of congestion in his voice, I want to know my kids are happy, they're healthy, and they're safe. The rest of it does not matter, because in the end, also, Harbinder, let's talk about humanity. Forget men or women, but in humanity, we're all playing these roles. Okay, we're all on this rat race. Now, I lost my parents very young. My marriage fell apart 13 years ago. Okay, a lot of relationships in my life, the most important ones, have just disappeared. So where I stand today, I've had points, and we've discussed this, where business has been an incredible high. I've been written about. I've been, you know, I've got the accolades, and there's been years where I have been at the bottomest, lowest pit ever. You know, failure in the biggest sense of the word failure, which we don't talk about enough. You know, so what is defining me? Why should any of those things define me? Why should, you know, you giving me airtime define me any more than me having really struggled and tried to keep it together for those years? Why shouldn't that define me too? Why should my motherhood define me? Why should my wifehood define me? Why should anything define me? So who am I minus all of those roles? And that's when the stress disappears.
Fantastic. You know, what I hear you say is that we don't have to fight cliches. We don't have to fight the anything except for redefine the conditioning that has been defining the roles of men and women.
Yes.
I think that's what we are fighting. It's not about women liberation or women going and doing this or not,
men pushing
or
women
men
down.
pushing
It's about
down.
none of that.
It's about not trying to define anything. Let them be.
Yes.
Let everyone be. Let every human being be.
It's that absolute core acceptance of people, you know, in a non-judgmental manner.
Anika, let me come to something, again, a very, very sensitive question. You know, when we look at the past, when you look at the traditions, there have been times where women were, during their menstrual cycle, not being allowed to go into a temple. They were suggested that do not go to the kitchen, right? And I used to find it, you know, when we were growing in a very evolved and a little more liberated times, and our generation started questioning this.
Yeah.
Right? And I've been in a role where I've had a chance to speak to a lot of people, including spiritual masters, etc. And you know, there have been instances where people have tried to define the science behind why this happens. I want to ask you as a woman that what do you think about this phase when you're going through menstrual cycles, the periods? Women, they go through pain, right? There's a physical discomfort. And I want you to relate to the current times when we are looking at the corporate world, and you've led large corporates where you've had large teams. and we are talking of period leaves, right? What happens to small companies where we are talking about 4 people team, 3 people team, who can't afford to have women just going away on chutti, but you can't be insensitive to the situation as well, right? So I want you to answer it or have a conversation based on your being a woman, so a woman's perspective. What do you think about the traditions? Was there some wisdom in it? Or what could be the reason why this was there in the first place? And what would you do as a woman, startup founder?
I feel that there are 2 parts to this. One is that don't assume, okay? And the second is have empathy. So I'm going to park those 2 words. In the last few years, so my family was Sanatan Dharmi. My father passed away young, didn't really do anything, kind of deviated off the path of God and the rest of it. Last 4-5 years, I've gotten back into it, and I have a female guru in Sanatan Dharma, which is not normal, okay? And she's like us, okay? She walks around, kids go to normal school, but she's a practicing acharya. And as I got back into it and I started going to the temples again, and I go to my local temple every single day and just spend some time over there. And during periods, she would say, just avoid. So, the feminist in me said, but why? I'm not like dirty, I'm not untouchable, it's a very normal thing. And she said, it's a very normal thing. And back then, when it was started, the intention was not from the point of view of how it's almost been, over the years, it's been, the intention has been diluted, or it's been, hijacked, so to say. The intention was that your women are precious and they're going through a delicate time. So there's acknowledgement of the fact that the days that you are menstruating are different days in your cycle. And so you get to rest from your primary work, which at those days was the kitchen. Okay, so don't go into the kitchen. That's where it started. And the second was, don't go into a mandir, because you get to even take time off God. Even God says rest, in these days. So that was their fundamental. People agree, people don't agree. Again, don't assume, have some empathy. Everyone's got their different views on it. These are not laid down laws that we should, because then that's when we sort of blur the lines of fanaticism and freedom of choice.
Yeah.
But I like the fundamental behind it. I like the fundamental, which is that we were precious enough and are precious enough, needless to say, there are women bodybuilders, there are women there are women boxers. There's nothing that a man can do that a woman cannot do. Okay? And maybe vice versa as well, except for the actual act of reproduction. Okay? But I like that we were built differently and we were meant to be nurtured too. And so maybe those kind of fundamentals came into practice with that intention. Okay? And then they got kind of, they got nullified over the years, or they got... So that's what I think of the olden traditions. As a woman who's never had an issue with her period, okay, I've worked out every single day of my period. I've gone to work every single day of my period. I had to catch myself and show that sense of empathy, okay, to women, including my daughter, okay, who are my besties, who would have much harder periods. So each woman is built differently. Periods are real enough for there to have been some kind of rule around them, even back in the day, in the times of our forefathers. And real enough for a rule to come about today, or a suggestion to come about today, that menstrual leave should happen. I would be, again, a little less extreme about this. Okay, I would not I don't want to go the fanatical male route, the fanatical female route. I'm not assuming anything on the part of men or women. I'm saying person to person, if a woman has a harder period, it's real what she's going through, and men don't go through it. she should be allowed to work from home or take, a day or two off as required. And there is a certain trust that comes in. But my same appeal would be to the women who are working in these organizations, including mine, or whether they are large organizations or small ones. It comes back down to not assuming, not expecting, not taking advantage of. It's not only men who take advantage, women can also. Again, I'm equating men and women.
Right.
I'm saying that they're both fundamentally responsible, both fundamentally capable, and so they're both fundamentally accountable.
Got it.
So as a woman, don't take advantage of this rule. Like, if I genuinely have never had a troublesome period, I should not take a day off. I should continue as is and as always, not just because I've got these 3 days a month that are possible for me to take off.
So it's basically that, if you finding it tough, if you're going through a problem,
Yes.
then
Humanity.
empathy. Take some time off.
Yes.
Be comfortable. What I've heard.
And acknowledging
Acknowledging.
that it is real.
Yeah.
We
Acknowledging
are not
it is
saying,
real.
We're not saying it's PMS. We're not saying this bullshit. We are acknowledging, like companies are, that there is a need perhaps for days off during your period.
Absolutely. What I learned from few conversations that I've had, and also listening to few spiritual masters online, my perspective of the religious angle that was given in the past was that there was a science behind it. One, it's not that women were not allowed at all to go to the temples. It was during certain phases, special days. If you are menstruating during that period, then do not go to the temple. And the science that was given as an answer to this was that there are these full moon nights where the tides are high,
Yes.
and there is more water and there is more liquid coming out of your body, and it just is counterproductive for a woman to be meditating on those days, right? That was one. I do not know how far scientifically
Yes,
it is.
that- I
So
have
that
heard
was
that, yeah.
so that was one aspect. The second aspect was more on the humanitarian ground, where, like you said, that the primary work of a woman at that point in time was managing the kitchen.
Yes.
So it was trying to give time off to go take care of yourself. You don't have to stress and work hard in the kitchen during those days.
Yes.
So that was the perspective. And the reason I'm sharing this is because if we were to be acknowledging these two things, then it just creates a perspective in the minds of the managers to acknowledge that the woman could be going through a challenge
Yes.
during this time. If she's not comfortable, give her time off so that she can deal with it and be comfortable, she can rest it out. So that's the humanitarian aspect of what I understood.
Yeah.
And that's what you are also amplifying. But Anika, we have been talking very, very, in every forum, in conferences, webinars, etc. We've been talking and addressing the period leave. But something that we have not been acknowledging visibly enough is the discussion around the perimenopause, right? It's the same thing. You were talking about hot flushes, etc. Women go through hormonal changes at that point in time where they are, distracted because of what they may be going through, and more so today because they are more aware of it. Initially people would, I think that women would not be even aware, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
ये पता नहीं इस उम्र में ऐसा क्या हो जाता है, लोग बिल्कुल डिफरेंट हो जाते हैं,
Exactly.
irritable हो जाते हैं, and now they are aware that there is something which is happening inside the body that is making me irritable.
It's real. It's
scientific.
scientific.
It's
Yes.
scientific. Also, the other side is that now you start expecting it. So there's this law of attraction that I'm now going to perimenopause, so I will have this. I am going to be irritable. So it's both sides of the coin. But the condition is real, right? Why aren't we having these conversations enough? Because at the senior level, when a woman is at that particular age, she's at a reasonably senior level
Yes.
within the organization. She's got her responsibilities. She's also managing the teams. her expectation from her work is very, very different. And she's also at an age where the stresses are not the usual ones every day.
Yeah.
It's the same stress professionally that a male would be going through.
Absolutely.
Right? What do we need to do to bring in the same thing, the empathy and acknowledgement for this in the corporate life?
Somewhere the conversations are changing about perimenopause as well, and menopause. I mean, the whole process of it. As awareness is building, social media, the journalists, the environment, information, the stimulants across all the various, media forums, it's so accessible that it's bound to happen about every stage of life, and there is talk about it now also because as women have evolved over time, and we are able to talk about the private things like menopause, like menstruation, etc. We're also able to talk about the very private things like menopause, and men are also having such conversations. Kids are having such conversations. It was funny. So last summer I couldn't sleep. It was just one of the things. I have slept like a baby my whole life, and I just wasn't able to sleep, and I did not know that was one of the symptoms of perimenopause. Okay. And so I was really struggling, and I would wake up in the morning, I'd be crabby. My son was home from college as well. And, the two of them, even if I'd hear a pin drop outside my room, I would wake up. And then I would be cranky because I couldn't go back to sleep. It was to the point where the kids said to me, can we do something to better your sleep? Because it's really, we've really find you on edge. So it was impacting my daily life and my family life.
Right.
And I went to the doctor, and she gave me some supplements and some non-HRT related stuff, and it really in a couple of weeks started helping me, and I started sleeping, and I'd knock out, and all of that. I heard my daughter on the phone with her friends, and she was saying, no, why don't you ask your mom to speak to my mama, because she's been sleeping a lot better, and since then her mood has been better. So the conversations are happening at every generation. They are recognizing that this is a real thing. They're recognizing that it's not just a figment of a woman's imagination. It's not drama. It's none of that. And to comment on your point on law of attraction, are we calling upon this irritation, this insomnia, this these hot flashes and all? I mean, I don't know. Are we calling upon anything in life? It's as good or bad as anything. As in it's as effective as calling upon anything in our lives. There is a scientific change in hormones, and that is proven, that is discussed, that is, that can be detected with tests. So, so there is that, that backs it up.
But what is the kind of support that women could get at this point in time?
Communities, access to doctors that talk more about menopause and that talk more about it in a constructed way. Structured menopause clinics, maybe, even in terms of the various elements that need to be brought into a menopause clinic, and looking at women holistically. So in terms of their mental health, their hormonal health, their physical health, their environment, all of that. Sense of community, so that you don't feel alone and you don't feel like you're going crazy, because trust me, these symptoms can make you feel a bit like you're imagining things, going crazy, and the changes within you are so obvious that your family gets impacted, and so then you get this constant and consistent feedback that you're being difficult. It's not just me, it's just me and my kids who live together, so it's different. But there are, in India especially, there's so many families, and suddenly this woman who was such a easygoing, chilled out woman, and maybe working, raising her kids, living with parents, husband, etc., is no longer as tolerant, is getting edgy, is getting set off by certain things. Is it the middle-age rage? Is it the realization that you're halfway through and now the hormones are changing and making you feel that in a more potent way?
Do you agree that women in general they struggle to kind of set boundaries and balance between work? I wouldn't say balance, they are able to balance, but it's difficult for them to set boundaries between their personal life and professional life. And this affects every relationship in their life. Relationship not just with their spouse or their boyfriend, the relationship with the peers at work, the relationship with children at home, relationship with the parents at home. So what is your take on this? That do you agree that they struggle to?
I feel women have definitely struggled more with boundaries and with compartmentalizing things in boxes like men do. When men go to work, they're at work. When they come home, they're home. I think women, as we've discussed today, have feel that we have a lot more to prove, you know. And if you're at work, you need to still prove that you're a good enough mother, wife, homemaker, you know, nurturer. If you're at work, if you're at home, you need to prove that you're still, you know, focused on the job. Otherwise, you know, you won't be taken as seriously and you won't be treated equitable to your male colleagues. So you're constantly having to prove. And somewhere along the way, when you hit this middle-age point and this middle-aged rage and this literally pause in your life, you know, it's a pause. It's almost a pause between before and after, and whatever before and after stands for. In different women, it's going to mean different things. You just become more comfortable with yourself, you know, with your decisions. You are no longer looking for approval from anyone. And, you know, I struggled with that for a long time because I was looking for approval from my parents who were already gone and could not give it to me because they were gone, you know. And I needed them to somewhere tell me it's okay for you to work because, you know, you need to work, you need to earn a living, you need to whatever. And also you deserve to do something that you're passionate about. I almost wanted that validation from my ex-husband saying, it's okay for you to work, you know, you're not neglecting our children. Now this man has left me, but still I'm needing that validation from him that I'm doing a good enough job, you know. I, you know, was the elder child in my family. I was the daughter. There were a lot of expectations on me. I had to squash a lot of my own desires, my own needs, my own traumas, and really kind of wear those pants in the family to be able to hold my family together. And that had its adverse effects because eventually I had a massive nervous breakdown. And, you know, it's because I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no, I can't. And so then you're viewed as this strong creature who can't fall apart. And the irony is when you do fall apart, you're judged for falling apart because how dare you fall apart? You couldn't fall apart. You are too strong. So when you need someone to just hold you up and give you the same nurturing that you've given to everyone over the years, they disappear because they're almost like, how dare you fall apart?
So Anika, tell me one thing. You know, all of us are responding to situations, our environment during the time of those certain situations. And it shapes our personality. It shapes our response system to the external factors. And like we were discussing that women they struggle to create or compartmentalize their life. And it does affect the physical, like you said, you went through a nervous breakdown. Do you think that women then start creating for themselves a split personality? You know? And I'm genuinely asking, I mean, you know, because you've gone through these situations in life where you start portraying yourself to the outside world in a particular manner, but inside of yourself, you still have those fears. You still have that feminine soft side.
100%.
How does a woman deal with this? Especially because, you know, there are responsibilities. You have your own dreams, you're doing your own venture, you have your own vision of what you want to do. You also are fearful about the outcome of that business because you need to, you know, generate money to give your lifestyle.
And you don't want to be perceived as a failure.
You don't want to be perceived as a failure, especially when you've had a corporate life, a very successful corporate life. How does a woman deal with this? If you can open up to the world today, who real Anika is and how does she deal with within herself as a split personality. If I can, I'm not meaning that you have a split personality, but I'm sure within yourself there's a dichotomy between what you want the world to perceive you as versus how you perceive you as.
100%. And I smile when you said split personality, because Harbinder, that's what I felt for so many years. That I was playing all the roles I had to be. I had to be fearless because of the things that were happening in my family. I was left with young children alone to care for. My mom had her heart transplant. My brother was struggling with addiction issues. And I had to be the strong one, and I think people thought I was that strong, but I think I was faking it till I was making it. I was so scared inside. I was so terrified I was going to lose my mom, my brother, that I wasn't going to do a good enough job with my children. Mm-hmm. I was so frightened about everything, and yet and so that soft side kind of died. Mm-hmm. I faked it till I made it, mm-hmm. and then I was that strong person that everyone needed me to be. But you see, when you're faking something, the truth does come out. And I think that's when I had my breakdown, is because I couldn't hide her any longer. She needed that sense of safety and nurturing to be able to be soft, and for that soft side to come out. Mm-hmm. Now 4 years later, this happened to me in 2022. 4 years later now, I feel safe with my children, safe with my girlfriends. And by safe, I mean not in any physical danger, but emotionally safe to be soft. Mm-hmm. And I've dated a bit in the middle, being a single woman. And another mentor of mine said, Anika, it's very difficult for a man, a middle-aged man, to be with a woman of your age and stage. It can be intimidating, mm-hmm. That you have managed everything yourself, like there's no need for him. And I said, but isn't that a very insecure man who would think like that? Because mm-hmm. a secure man would be proud of me, mm-hmm. and would clearly see that all I need is an emotionally safe space, mm-hmm. to be able to bring out that softer side and not have those high walls, Mm-hmm. And I soon after that conversation with my mentor, I read something, on Instagram, which is that her soft side will come out the minute there is someone strong enough to hold it. And I think the last time I felt that soft side was when my dad was alive, which was 20 years ago. Mm. And I feel it now. I feel it now in the last few years that she's coming out again. So she was completely split, the personalities, the tough cookie and the soft side. But somewhere she's okay to show herself now. She's feeling mm-hmm. safer. As my kids are growing up, they make me feel safe too. So that sense of femininity is allowed. And I think this is where I have somewhere learned, that it is okay to be a bit of both. I don't have to sacrifice this soft side to be this ball-breaking, ambitious person. I can be ambitious and hold on to this soft one as well, And that's me in my middle-aged wisdom and sense of security, who is able to articulate this. Maybe a few years ago, I wouldn't have been able to.
This is such a beautiful thing that you brought out, because a lot of people, and in fact, this is not just women, it's even the men, who struggle to deal with who they are inside, acknowledging their fears and responding to that, and going out and saying that, listen, I want to do this, I have this dream, but I don't know if it's going to work or not, and I'm really, really fearful about this. Mm-hmm. So that acknowledgement comes with wisdom, and I think that wisdom comes with age. And I think women are more blessed to understand and listen to themselves, because, I think everyone needs to spend some time with themselves, right? Let's come to generational shifts, because you're a mother of kids, and you are a mother of a teenage girl. And since we are talking about women and women health and women issues in this particular episode, I'd keep myself focused to that. Do you think the teenage girls of today, are they more aware, or are they, because of lot of awareness, more confused? Right? Don't speak just as a mother, speak as a woman who's seeing teenage girls around.
I think it's a double-edged sword. They're definitely more aware, therefore, of who they are. They're surer of themselves than I definitely was at that age. And I mean collectively. My daughter's got 3-4 besties who live in my house, and I'm extremely close to them. They are amazing girls, you know, all of them, including my daughter, where they have this inner strength and this self-knowledge, you know. I want to do this, I want this. You know, they know what they want so clearly that it's almost frightening, because how do they know what they want at 17? Right. Yet they know what they want, you know. So it's a double-edged sword, you know. I think they definitely are more aware, more self-aware. There is so much more information, clarity, and therefore the ability to make choices. In my home, it's a democracy. It doesn't run like anything else. So the three of us, you know, my son, my daughter, and me, are a democracy. So there's a lot of freedom of choice, okay, which also can be negative at times, right? Because she's got the ability to choose to be, she's fully aware of what she wants and all of that. But I think there's so much out there that I question if those choices are, you know, are the right ones. So I don't think there's confusion in this generation, but I think sometimes when you're so sure of yourself, when you haven't fully grown, when you haven't fully evolved, when you're not really the person you're going to end up being, then how can you make such strong choices, you know, or know something with so much clarity? Maybe they do, maybe I'm wrong, you know, but that is the bit I would question.
So Anika, you know, this question actually came out because when you look at the young kids who are now working and joining the corporate life, they are, in my opinion, they're taking a lot of risks because they're basing their choices and decisions on whatever they're watching on Instagram, right? Which influences how they think. They come in and then they want to quit. And when they quit, you ask them, because it's worrying for an organization to start losing people, right? You've been in that space.
The attrition at that level.
Yeah. And when you ask them that, you know, why are they moving on? And they say something is missing, right? And when you ask them that, what is it that is missing? What is it that we could do to fulfill what is missing in your role? They're like, I don't know, sir, but something is missing, you know. That is what is worrying. Like, why, when you say that they know what is going on, they are very, very clear about, what I am seeing outside is a little different, because I think they think that they know what they want,
we're saying the same
but they don't actually know what they want.
Yeah.
Right?
So they have that clarity, they are going for it, but do they really know? And therefore, they're going for something with full gusto. But when they arrive in that space, they're not sure that that was the right decision or not, right. Which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So, you know, and which is kind of good also to a certain extent, because they're experiencing stuff. It's more of experiential learning, as we call it. But do you think, when we are looking at this particular generation of girls specifically, do you think that they're falling short of what you as a parent or anyone as a parent could be looking at? Or do you think that they're doing actually better as a generation? And you know, the reason I'm asking you this is because I used to always, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people. And one view is that, you know what, we have to take a step back and try and understand them.
Yes.
Right? So maybe we don't understand their way of thinking. So we need to change. Right? At the same time, we have also realized in our lifespan that what we would think 20 years ago was not out of the mature thinking which could help us later.
Yeah.
And we could want to go back and change a few things if we were to relive those years. What is your opinion? I mean, I've shared my opinion. What is your opinion?
I tend to agree with you. I feel that there's a lot of stuff that you discover in hindsight, okay, which obviously they don't have. They're 17, 18 years old. What hindsight could you possibly have?
Yeah.
With knowledge, comes solidity in terms of what they think that their decisions are. Okay, but with that kind of solidity, you're not leaving room for what the universe may show you. Okay, and you're also leaving more room for what they would perceive as failure, because their expectations of themselves are so high because of their strong choices that they, then if those goals are not met in the stipulated period of time, they get disappointed, and therefore attrition, and therefore changing pace, etc. When we went in, yes, we had a certain type of a certain idea, but there was flexibility, or there was room for new things to come in and reveal themselves as the journey went on. You may have thought, I want to be a journalist, okay, but how your journey has evolved may look very different from what you thought it would be when you were 18,
Absolutely.
19, 20 versus when you are now, because you don't know it all then. You don't even know it all now.
Absolutely.
So, but the confidence with which this generation speaks works well for them, where they know their mind, but can work negatively also, where sometimes when you know your mind so much, you're setting yourself up for some level of disappointment, because the universe doesn't always work as per plan.
The difference between what I find between our generation and today's generation, I would not even say generation, at our age, is a realization.
Yes.
That we, over a period of time, every human being, over a period of time, as and when they evolve with experiences, learning, we are able to create a maturity in ourselves to be able to deal with uncertainty.
Yes.
Right? And someone who has not seen enough life or has not had yet enough experiences may not be able to deal with uncertainty as well with the level of maturity that something comes with age.
Yes.
So that is, and the problem is that the empowerment today among the kids is so much, because they are able to do a lot of things. At our point in time, if I wanted to go set up start my professional journey as an entrepreneur, I will need hand-holding of my parents. I will need technology to be able to do that at a certain age, or there were restrictions. Today, they are empowered to do that without anybody's involvement.
Day one. No experience required.
And so the chances of, I wouldn't say failure, but setbacks is higher for them.
Yes.
And they have not yet developed the maturity to deal with that uncertainty.
And disappointment. Which is inevitable in everyone's life.
Right. And which is why I find that the younger kids today are more prone to anxiety leading to depression than what I had seen when we were younger among our friend circle.
Yes.
Second thing I think is that today's generation is dealing with a lot of loneliness. It's not the older people who are dealing with loneliness, it is the younger lot, because they are with their phone, right? They're talking to friends, but through technology, right? And they go quiet if they were dealing with something. They didn't have too much or too many people to talk to like we had when we were younger. We always had one friend who was a confidant, where we could go and tell them what we were dealing with, right? And it helped when someone said ki yaar chill kar, kuch nahi hota, let's move on, right? Today's kids, in fact not just kids, everyone is going on to ChatGPT, and that becomes over a period of time their friend, their mentor, their guiding sense, right? And that is a very, very risky thing, in my opinion, right now, right? And so I don't know if it's the right thing or not. I think it's evolution, and we are evolving alongside. And so it's a journey. I want to talk about empowerment. It's a very loosely used term, especially when we're talking of women empowerment. People deal with shit in life, right? Or they know how to deal with situations. Do you think empowerment today is more performative or more transitional? Is it more evolving, or is it a pressure to perform and we are responding to that pressure, especially for women? And when we are looking at women who deal with pressures, and especially what we see on various OTT platforms, the message that comes out very clearly is that you need to love yourself. And the meaning of going out and loving yourself is very, very different from different perspectives. It could be go pamper yourself, which is what is seen in the social media, that it's okay to go pamper yourself, and it is seen as a reflection of self-love, versus going and telling or giving a message that prioritize yourself, right? How can we help women understand that you need to prioritize yourself, you need to prioritize your health, you need to prioritize, and when I'm talking about health, it is not just physical health, it is about mental health. So one is, what is your perspective of empowerment, and what does self-love mean to you, and what you think should mean to everyone around?
I think empowerment has become a very external word, okay, which is that it defines external success. Women empowerment, meaning empower women to do certain things. Women are powerful as it is, okay. It's about finding the power within themselves, and the definition of that is different for every woman. And I think the biggest mistake that we've done over the years is we've said women empowerment, and we've connected it to a particular role, a particular level of fame, a particular level of money. That's not now at age 47 what I feel is empowerment. What I feel is empowerment is being okay in my own skin, being okay with the decisions that I have made, being okay with the place I'm at in my life. And that automatically connects to self-love. Self-love is not going to a spa and pampering yourself and giving yourself those hours. Self-love is accepting yourself, owning yourself for all your good, bad and ugly chinks, and being okay with all of that. I'm not saying that, accepting if you're a murderer or you're, a cheater or you're a whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, first of all, acknowledging that I am this person, whoever it is. Okay, this has been my journey. It is not the same as your journey. It is not the same as her journey. It is my own journey. I am not on the same timeline as you. I'm not the same timeline as her. Okay, and therefore I accept me in all my entirety. That's one. The second is that I think of myself as worthy enough for the small things I would suggest to my best friend. Okay, so if I'm suggesting to my best friend, babe, take a break, chutti le lo, aaj you're tired, okay, why don't you go take a nap? Or to my daughter, take a walk, have you tried meditating, etc. Those are the things, those are the allowances that I gift myself. And if I can do that, then I truly love myself. Because if you can imbibe the same pieces of advice that you give to your closest loved ones, and then you actually embrace those things within yourself, that means you are loving yourself as you love your closest people. And then we can say that there is a level of self-love in you. And as for prioritizing yourself and your health, in the end, that is all that we have. The roles finish eventually. The actors come off the stage, the camera stops, recording, and you are left a retired person. Your children have grown and they've gone and started their own families. You are now left with your garden, your hobbies, your 2-3 gine chune log that are still perhaps alive at that point, and your thoughts. So at that point, what is empowerment and what is success? And that's the way that we should view it today. And that's what our goal should be.
the meaning of success changes in different phases of your life.
Yes.
Right? As someone who has now the wisdom of learning from books, work-life experiences, relationship experiences, how would you go and explain what success could mean to your daughter?
I think that's one of the things that I have tried to bang into, literally bang into their very ethoses, both of them, my son and my daughter, is success is happiness in its, do you have work that fulfills you and excites you every day? You can get up and hop, skip and jump to your workplace, you know you've hit jackpot, you know. Do you have literally a handful of people who you can count on, okay, who you love, who you can be yourself with, who you can show your chinks to? That's success. Do you have a few meaningful things that you can do through the week, whether it is a meditation practice, a fitness regime, a set of hobbies, music that means something to you, you know, that is success. And have you collected experiences in your life, adventures, little bits of, whether it's travel, it doesn't have to be to, you know, the most expensive parts of the world. It's just about experiences with people who you know, care for.
Right.
That is success. Those are all bits of success that end up being your full personality and your full definition of success. It has changed. I mean, because the reality is, that's what I said, you want to achieve that fame, you want to achieve that money, you're going to die. You're not taking your organs with you, you're not taking your money with you, you're not taking your fame with you, you're not taking any of that. 20 years on, how many people remember my father? Probably just a few of us in the family and his 5-6 closest friends. And so when you look at it, life has moved on and will move on without us as well.
Absolutely.
You know, so live for yourself. Don't hurt anyone by design, but put yourself first too. And, you know, make those definitions of, you know, living a healthy, happy, wholesome life your priority. Because those are the things that are going to count in the end.
I mean, I choose that word happy because I feel that success to me, if I were to define it to my son or to anyone of that age, is letting them know that, you know, do whatever you do if you really wish to do it, but make sure that you are happy doing it. It should not feel like a struggle for you to do it, right? The lighter side is my son comes back and tells me, I enjoy playing games on the mobile and you don't let me do it. That's what gives me happiness. So that's a different thing. But I think if you were to derive happiness in doing what, even if it is your work, if you're happy doing that work, it doesn't feel like a struggle to wake up in the morning and go for that work, I think you've found your calling.
Yeah.
If it is in relationship, if you feel happy and joyous sitting with someone, that's a successful relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So I think happiness and joy is something that defines happiness, success
Yes.
to me.
Yes.
And it is not dependent on any one particular age. It is not dependent on achievement on certain things.
Yes.
It is in your day-to-day routine.
Absolutely.
Are you feeling happy today doing what you are doing?
Absolutely.
You know? So my last question to you, Anika, is that since we are talking about women's health and since you have been working on women hygiene, women's health, what is that one most underserved discussion that needs to be addressed in the next 5 to 10 years to bring women's health to where you feel that it should have reached now?
I think it is not a particular life stage, but it is holistically, women of all ages need to start off young itself and take it on till their last days of keeping their health a priority, focusing on their preventative care, which is their health and well-being, you know, keeping mobile, keeping your, your health parameters in check, making sure that you're getting your scans and tests as required, and therefore building a legacy of health for yourself.
Anika, you know what, this conversation today, I feel one thing is very, very clear. You know, when I came in and we started talking, it was more about how do women derive strength. But I think the biggest takeaway that I have from this conversation is that you already have the strength. Acknowledge it,
Yes.
right? And put it to use. The conversation is not about how you can use your strength, but I think it is about acknowledging it, creating awareness or becoming aware, setting boundaries, and have the permission to do something about it. And that permission is not something that you need to seek from anyone else, but one thing is very, very clear: the permission is something that you seek from your own self.
Yes.
Give yourself the permission. And you use this word that if I were to give allowance to myself to be able to find myself worthy to give this advice. So it's an allowance that you need to give yourself. It is not something that you need from anyone else.
Yes.
And that's what these conversations on Wellbeing Voices is all about. Anika, thank you so much for taking out time today to speak to us on Wellbeing Voices.
Thank you so much, Harbinder. I loved being here.